I hadn't seen my son in 7 years. The first thing he said to Mefter, I traveled 2,100 miles, stiff-backed and sleep-deprived, with swollen ankles, and a gift wrapped in blue tissue paper in my lap was a whisper that split my heart like rotting wood. Don't let the neighbors see you, Ma. I stood on the whitewashed porch, the suitcase handle pressing deep into the creases of my palm. The sky was that pale kind of gray you get just before sunset, when the shadows stretch longer than they should and everything looks like it's holding its breath. Ethan's house was beautiful, 2 stories tall, with blue shutters and a little swing on the veranda. There were potted ferns, and those lights, those tiny golden bulbs wrapped around the porch rail like a string of promises. Everything was neat, polished, controlled. Unlike me, I hadn't even had a chance to use the restroom after the long flight from Tallahassee, after the 2 buses and 1 Uber ride. I looked down at my shoes' dusty loafers, one of the laces undone. My coat still smelled faintly of the plane. There was a smudge of lipstick on my wrist, where I'd rubbed my mouth after falling asleep against the window. He didn't hug me. Come on, he said. Quickly. He took the handle of my suitcase like it was something embarrassing, like a bag full of loose laundry, and motioned with his chin toward the door. I told you not to come this weekend, he added under his breath, eyes flitting toward the cul-de-sac across the road. The neighbors were out. 2 women jogging. A golden retriever sniffing around a mailbox. I thought it'd be a surprise, I said. My voice felt small in my throat. I called, but you didn't answer, and then I thought, why not just show up? I haven't seen Lily in so long. Or the boys. He didn't respond. He opened the door and stepped aside. I hadn't been in his house since he bought it. He never invited me. All the pictures I'd seen were on Facebook, secondhand through a friend of a friend. The inside smelled like lavender and lemon. Hardwood floors. A cream-colored rug so spotless I hesitated to step on it. Where's Lily? I asked. Ethan set my suitcase beside the coat closet and looked up the stairs, his mouth a tight line. She's not home. Will she be back soon? He hesitated. We'll talk upstairs, he said. The guest room was perfectly made. Starched sheets, a white comforter folded like it was fresh from a catalog. A small desk in the corner. No photos. No books. Just a small ceramic bowl filled with unused potpourri and a single window overlooking the backyard. You can stay the night, he said, closing the door behind us. But you'll have to be quiet tomorrow. There's a community event down the street. Quiet? I asked. He looked at me like I was a child. You just don't understand how things work here, Ma. Something inside me curled like a fern touched by frost. I don't understand, I said slowly. Ethan, I'm your mother. I raised you. I changed your diapers and sang you to sleep when you had night terrors for 2 years straight. What is it exactly that I don't understand? He didn't answer right away. He sat on the edge of the bed and clasped his hands together, like he was trying to hold his own fingers still. This neighborhood is particular, he said. We're part of a homeowners association. There are expectations. Appearances. It's not like Florida. You mean it's not like me? He flinched, and that was all the confirmation I needed. I walked to the window and looked out. There was a swing set in the yard. A sandbox. A little blue plastic slide. Do they know you have a mother? I asked, turning. Of course, he said. They just don't know you're visiting. He stood up and crossed the room, then stopped a few feet from me. Ma, he said, you show up unannounced, looking like. Like what? He didn't say it, but I could see it written in the lines between his eyes. Like I didn't belong. Like I was a relic from a life he'd shed like an old coat. Dinner was worse. Lily came home around 7. Her eyes widened when she saw me, the keys still in her hand, the car door barely shut. Linda, she said. Oh wow, you're here. The boys didn't remember me. They were 8 and 5 now. The last time I'd seen them, the younger one was still nursing. I brought out the gifts I'd bought at the airport, 2 tiny astronaut figurines and a coloring book, but they looked at them like I'd handed them dust. They said thank you, prompted by their mother's sharp glance. I tried to smile, tried to ask them about school, friends, their favorite cartoons. But they kept looking to their dad. And he kept looking toward the blinds, making sure they were shut. We ate salmon and asparagus on porcelain plates. Nobody spoke unless it was to pass the salt or cut the boys' food. I remember when you used to eat ketchup on everything, I said to Ethan, laughing softly. He didn't smile. That was a long time ago, he said. I don't eat like that anymore. After dinner, Lily cleared the table without asking for help. She was thin now, her hair lighter. She looked like she belonged here in this house, in this neighborhood. I didn't. Ethan offered me tea. I said no, thank you. I didn't want to owe them anything more than I already did. That night, I sat at the desk in the guest room and wrote in my journal. I always carry it. A soft leather-bound one with my name stitched into the corner. Dear Diary, today I saw my son for the first time in 7 years. He looked at me like a stranger, and I pretended not to notice the shame in his eyes. I paused, then wrote. Maybe I was a bad mother. Or maybe he just forgot what love looks like. There was a picture in my wallet I kept folded behind my driver's license. Ethan at age 9, missing 2 front teeth, arms wrapped around a puppy we rescued from the shelter. He had dirt on his knees and joy in his eyes. I set it on the desk, and I cried until the pillow muffled my sobs. In the morning, I found a note. Lily took the boys to a birthday party. I'm working from home today. Don't go outside. I read it twice. Then I tore it in half. I opened the window and let the sun pour in. I ran my fingers through my hair and pulled on the only clean blouse I had, white with a little sunflower pattern near the collar. I applied lipstick with shaky fingers, then stepped barefoot onto the grass behind the house. And I danced. Not for long, just a few minutes. The way I used to in the kitchen when Ethan was little, holding him in my arms as we spun. The neighbors didn't see me, but Ethan did. He stood at the upstairs window, a silhouette behind the glass, watching. And for once, he didn't look angry. He looked up broken, like a dam cracking beneath its own pressure. I thought he might come down to talk, but he didn't. By noon, the house was quiet again. Lily and the boys still gone. Ethan holed up in his office. I tiptoed into the kitchen and found a loaf of bread, sliced tomatoes, and a can of tuna. I made myself a sandwich. I sat at the table and ate it slowly, watching the light change on the tile floor. Then I heard footsteps. He stood in the doorway. No words, just silence. You were dancing, he finally said. Yes. In the backyard. Yes. Why? I looked up. Because I'm still alive, Ethan. He blinked. Then he sat down across from me, elbows on the table, palms pressed together like a prayer. I don't know how to be around you, he said. I nodded. I know. I feel like you remind me of everything I tried to leave behind. A beat. I remind you of yourself, I said. His eyes filled, just for a second. And then he whispered, she doesn't know about my childhood, Ma. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? Lily, the neighbors. This life I built it without the past. Without the trailer park. Without the food stamps and hand-me-downs. I told them you passed when I was 23. The air left my lungs. He had buried me in lies. I stared at him. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. You told them I was dead? He flinched. It wasn't supposed to be like that. At first it was just Lily. I didn't think we'd get serious. Then it spread. Her parents. Her friends. The kids were born. And then it felt too late. Too late to tell the truth. I whispered. He ran a hand down his face, dragging the weight of his shame across his skin. You don't understand. People like them like us now don't get it. They don't know how hard it was growing up. I didn't want pity. I didn't want questions. So you erased me. I was trying to protect the life I built. A silence sat between us. Cold. Heavy. Thicker than grief. I flew across the country, Ethan, I said slowly. I saved money for a year. I practiced walking up and down the block so I could make it through the airport without needing a wheelchair. I wrapped a gift for each of your boys. I didn't come here to ruin your life. I know, he whispered. No, you don't. Because if you did, you would have hugged me at the door. He dropped his head in his hands. The tears finally came, soft and quiet, dripping between his fingers like rain through a cracked roof. I don't know how to fix this, he said. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. I steadied myself on the back of the chair. You start by telling them the truth, I said. He looked up, eyes red. What if they don't forgive me? I gave a tired, sad smile. Then at least you'll know you tried. That's all we can do. Keep trying, even when it hurts. Lily came home that evening, the boys running ahead with little party bags swinging in their hands. I stayed in the guest room. Ethan said he needed to talk to her alone. I listened from the top of the stairs. Her name is Linda, he said softly. She's not dead. I heard Lily gasp. Then footsteps, fast and sharp, across the hardwood. What do you mean? She's not dead. I lied. Years ago, before we got married. I didn't want you to know where I came from. You told me she died of cancer. I know. My God, Ethan. The silence that followed was longer than any sentence could bear. Then, her voice low, trembling. She's your mother. I know. I thought I knew everything about you. I didn't want you to know the pain. There was a pause. A door creaked. A chair scraped. I imagined them sitting, facing each other for the first time without illusions. Then Lily said something that cracked the world wide open. You need to make this right. Dinner the next night was different. The boys were told the truth gently. Ethan explained that Grandma Linda was here because he'd made a mistake. He said he lied, and it hurt people, and now he was trying to be brave enough to fix it. Lily didn't speak much, but she cooked a roast. She set the table with the good plates. She poured me a glass of wine and smiled without bitterness. The boys sat closer to me. The younger one asked if I liked dinosaurs. I said yes, even though I didn't. He ran to get his plastic T-Rex and handed it to me like a sacred artifact. The older one showed me a drawing he'd made. It was of his family. I was in it. He'd added me with a yellow crayon and drawn a heart over my head. Later that night, Lily knocked on my door. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing the comforter with her palm. I don't know what to say, she said. I'm angry, hurt, confused. But more than anything, I'm sorry. You don't owe me an apology, I said gently. I do, because I believed the story, and I never questioned it. I should have known better. You trusted your husband. She nodded. Her eyes welled up, and he betrayed both of us. I'm still trying to forgive him, I admitted. She looked at me then, really looked at me, like I was a person and not a ghost. Do you want to stay for the week? She asked. My lips parted. I don't want to be a burden. You're not. You're family. And I think the boys could really use a grandma. The week passed in moments stitched together like patchwork. We made pancakes on Wednesday morning. The boys insisted on sprinkles and too much syrup. I let them. On Thursday, we went to the park. I watched them climb monkey bars and shout for me to look, Grandma, look. My heart swelled every time I did. Friday night, Lily brought out an old photo album. She asked if I'd help fill in the blanks who was who in Ethan's childhood. There were pictures I hadn't seen in years. One of me in a waitress uniform, hugging Ethan after a spelling bee. One of our old trailer, sun-bleached and surrounded by cracked cement. I told her the stories. I told her the truth. That it was hard. That we were poor. That I made mistakes. That I did my best. She listened. She cried once. And then she said, thank you. On Saturday morning, Ethan came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. I need to show you something, he said. We walked into his office. He sat at the computer, clicked open a browser, and pulled up the HOA website. Every month, they feature a resident in the community newsletter, a kind of spotlight. I looked at him. He swallowed. I submitted your story. I blinked. My what? I wrote about you. About what you did for me. How you raised me. Worked double shifts. Sacrificed everything. How you taught me what resilience means. I sat down slowly. They'll publish it next month, he said. With a photo, if you'll let me take one. My chest ached in the best way. Are you sure? I asked. I need people to know where I came from. I need me to know. He reached for my hand. For the first time in years, I let him hold it. Sunday morning, I packed my bag. The boys begged me to stay. I promised I'd come back in the summer. As I zipped up my suitcase, Ethan stepped into the room. You could move here, he said, nervous. We could help you find a place. The boys Lilimu want you close. My throat tightened. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'll think about it. We stood at the door. He didn't whisper this time. He didn't flinch or glance at the neighbors. He wrapped his arms around me, tight and full of the love he had buried under years of fear. I'm sorry, Ma. I forgive you, I said, whispering it against his cheek. Then I stepped into the sunlight, not hiding, not ashamed. And I smiled at the neighbors across the street. Because I was seen. I flew back to Tallahassee 2 days later. The airport felt colder this time, not because of the air conditioning, but because I was leaving something behind I never knew I missed so much. Hope. Ethan stood with me at the gate until they called for boarding. He looked different now, not in his clothes or haircut, but in the way he held himself like a man who had stopped hiding. I'll call you, he said, hugging me again. For real this time. You better, I said, or I'll surprise you again, and next time I'll bring a tambourine. He laughed. I don't remember the last time I heard him do that. Not the polite, short kind but one from his chest. Before I stepped through security, I turned around. He was still watching me. He waved. I waved back. Back home, the apartment smelled musty. I opened windows, fed the cat, sat in my old recliner, and stared at the living room wall for a long while. The silence crept in again, familiar and hollow. But this time, it didn't feel quite so final. The phone rang the next evening. It was Ethan. "Boys want to FaceTime," he said. And that was how it started. 3 times a week, like clockwork. They'd show me their drawings, their Lego spaceships, the tiny cracks in their fingernails from climbing trees. Sometimes Lily would wave in the background. Sometimes Ethan would sit and talk to me afterward. He asked about my health, my knees, my garden, my stories. I started writing again. Little memoir pieces, nothing big. I sent a few to him. He printed them and hung one on the fridge. A piece called "The Hard Years Don't Last Forever." One day in late April, Lily called me privately. "We've been thinking," she said, "about that move. If you're still considering it." I hesitated. "There's a retirement complex about 15 minutes from here. Very clean. Lots of trees. They host painting nights and have a library and a shuttle to the store. You'd be close. We could see you anytime." "I don't want to intrude," I said reflexively. "You wouldn't be," she said, gently but firmly. "You'd be coming home." I covered my mouth. Tears spilled before I could stop them. "I don't know if I can start over again." "You wouldn't be starting over," she replied. "You'd just be continuing." By June, I'd made up my mind. It was a strange thing saying goodbye to a life that had once felt like a prison, now turned into a sort of quiet safety net. The apartment manager hugged me. The lady at the market gave me an old plastic cooler for the move. Ethan flew down to help me pack. It felt surreal, watching him fold the same blouses he once threw tantrums on. He wrapped my glass figurines in newspaper, carried boxes down the stairs without complaint. He even fixed the screen door that had been broken for 3 years. On the last night in Florida, we sat out on the porch steps. Fireflies blinked in the hedges. The cat curled against my ankle. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said. "I know I hurt you. You could have walked away forever, and I wouldn't have blamed you. I know." He lit a cigarette, then looked embarrassed and put it out. "You remind me of your father when you do that," I said with a smile. "Yeah." Same regret in the eyebrows. He laughed. "I never even met him." "I know. And I hope you forgive me for that, too." His face grew soft. "You were everything, Ma. You were the roof, the dinner, the discipline, the forgiveness. You did it all. I was just too proud to see it." He put his arm around me and leaned his head on mine. "I don't deserve you." "Yes," I said quietly. "You do." The move was exhausting, but smooth. The retirement complex was just as Lily had said, quiet, green, full of life and dignity. My apartment had a balcony and a small kitchenette. Enough for me. The staff were kind. Other residents introduced themselves right away. Margaret in 3B loved jigsaw puzzles. Glenn in 2C taught ukulele. There were potluck dinners every Friday and walking clubs every morning. For the first time in years, I wasn't just existing. I was belonging. Ethan and the boys visited almost every weekend, sometimes just for lunch, sometimes to pick me up and take me to their place for Sunday roast. I sat in the stands at Little League games, watched school recitals. I became Grandma Linda, not the ghost of a lie, but a flesh-and-blood woman with laughter lines and too much lipstick. Lily even brought me with her to a book club once. The women welcomed me in like I'd always been part of the circle. I brought banana bread. They asked for the recipe. Ethan's article came out in the community newsletter in July. It was called "The Woman Who Raised Me Twice." He emailed it to me, but I already had a copy. Lily framed it and hung it in my living room. When I read it, I wept. He wrote, "I lied because I was ashamed of where I came from. But the truth is, I came from strength, from courage, from a woman who gave up her dreams so I could chase mine. And I'm proud, now, to say that woman is alive. She's here. She's my mother." In August, we had a barbecue. It was my idea. We invited the neighbors. Lily made lemonade and Ethan grilled burgers. The boys handed out name tags. I brought out a photo album and sat with a group of curious women who passed it around, page by page. No one judged. No one whispered. No one turned away. In fact, one woman leaned over and said, "You must be so proud." And I was. I really, truly was. That night, as the sky turned golden and the guests drifted off, Ethan sat beside me on the porch swing. You still dance in the mornings? He asked. I nodded. In the living room now. Margaret says I have the hips of a 40-year-old. He laughed. The breeze smelled like charcoal and jasmine. I thought I'd never get this back, he said softly. Family. Forgiveness. I reached for his hand and held it. You didn't get it back, Ethan. You earned it. He looked at me with misty eyes and whispered, Thank you for not giving up on me. September rolled in with golden trees and cooler air. At the retirement complex, we decorated the halls with paper leaves and cinnamon-scented wreaths. I taught the Tuesday craft group how to make pinecone owls, and every Thursday afternoon I'd join Margaret and Glenn on the patio for coffee and a game of dominoes. But it wasn't the activities that made it feel like home. It was the sound of Ethan's boys running down the hall, yelling, Grandma, before I even had the door open. It was Lily calling me to ask what seasoning I used in my chili. It was Ethan texting at midnight with a simple, Ma, you up? I miss you. And I'd always answer, because I'd waited years to hear those words. One afternoon in October, Ethan asked if he could bring some coworkers by. They were collecting community stories for a project, something about family legacies and oral histories. I told them about you, he said. About everything. They want to interview you. I hesitated. I'm not exactly television material, I said. He smiled. You're the only material that matters. So they came, 2 women and a man, with microphones and soft voices and eyes full of reverence. They asked questions. I answered with as much truth as I could. I told them about waitressing double shifts while Ethan slept in the back booth, curled around a backpack. About scraping together $40 for his school trip to the Science Museum, knowing it meant no groceries for 2 days. About the year we lived without heat, using the oven door to warm our hands. I didn't tell it to make anyone cry. I told it because surviving is a story too. They recorded it all. And at the end, the youngest woman, barely 30, with a pixie cut and soft eyes, stood up and hugged me. My mom raised me alone too, she whispered. I never saw it from her side. Until now. The video went viral, of course it did. The story of the mother her son tried to hide and then brought back to life hit every corner of social media within a week. Thousands of comments, letters in the mail, people who saw their own mothers in my face. Some judged Ethan, but most understood. Shame can grow in good soil too, and love, when watered, can return after the drought. He read every comment, cried through some of them, printed one and taped it on his fridge. It said, You're never too late to do the right thing. One Saturday, I found myself back in the neighborhood I wasn't supposed to be seen in. But this time, Ethan didn't whisper. He stood beside me on the front lawn, waving at passing neighbors. One of them, an older gentleman with a golden retriever, walked over and offered me a slice of homemade pie. Heard a lot about you, ma'am, he said. Glad to finally meet you. I almost didn't know what to say. I took the pie. I smiled. And I said, It's good to be seen. The months passed like beads on a rosary, smooth, sacred, full of repetition and grace. At Christmas, I decorated my little apartment with paper snowflakes and knitted ornaments. Ethan brought over the kids to help. They drank hot cocoa and hung crooked garlands, laughing the whole time. I gave them each a letter that night, handwritten, sealed in gold envelopes. Letters about their father, about love, about forgiveness, about how people make mistakes, but that doesn't mean they are mistakes. They read them aloud. We cried together, and then laughed through the tears. On New Year's Eve, Ethan invited me to stay the night. We watched old movies and popped sparkling cider with the boys. At midnight, Lily hugged me tight. I hope you never leave, she said. I didn't have the heart to tell her that. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to. Spring came early that year. One morning, I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched a butterfly land on the railing. I thought about how fragile its wings were, how hard it had to fight to get out of the cocoon, how it didn't know where it was going, only that it had to fly. And I realized, that was me. That was Ethan. That was us. They asked me to speak at a community luncheon in April. I stood in front of a room full of strangers and held the microphone with both hands. My name is Linda, I said. I'm a mother. I'm a survivor. I'm a woman who was forgotten, then remembered, then loved again. There were tears in the crowd. A woman in the front row reached for her daughter's hand. I want you to know, I said, voice trembling. It is never too late to call your mother, to write the letter, to knock on the door. Shame dies in the light. But love? Love lives anywhere. They gave me a standing ovation. But more than that, they gave me belonging. In July, Ethan and Lily celebrated their 10th anniversary. They had a backyard party, balloons tied to every chair, streamers hanging from the fence. During the toast, Ethan stood up and tapped his glass. I used to think love was about perfection, he said. About having the right house, the right job, the right story. But I was wrong. He looked at me, sitting beside Lily and the boys. Love is about honesty, about showing your scars and saying, I'm still here. My mother taught me that. She reminded me that we're allowed to come back, even when we've lost our way. He raised his glass toward me. To the woman who taught me how to stand, and how to kneel when I needed forgiveness. I couldn't speak. I only raised my glass and nodded. And in my chest, something broken had finally fused whole. I'm 76 now. Some mornings, I still wake up and expect the silence of that Florida apartment. I still flinch at my reflection, half expecting to see the woman Ethan wanted hidden. But she's gone now. And in her place is someone new. Someone stronger, brighter, braver. I walk every day. I dance every Tuesday in the rec room. I write stories that get published in small journals. And every Sunday, Ethan brings me daisies, the ones I used to grow by our trailer when he was a boy. He never forgets. And neither do I. Because this story isn't just mine. It's ours. A story of silence. Then shame. Then light. Then love.